Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a 7-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Alison McAulay is a groundbreaking leadership development theorist and practitioner, executive coach, and trauma-based therapist. Her mission is to re-humanize businesses and their teams and cultures by expanding the consciousness, compassion, creativity, and capabilities of senior leaders and the team members they lead. McAulay is the co-founder and chief learning officer of the boutique leadership consultancy Switch On Leadership. In this role, she is a coach and advisor to CEOs and teams at organizations like Syngenta, Zalando, Citizen, and Lego. McAulay is a former Team USA elite gymnast, professional dancer, and choreographer in Los Angeles and San Francisco. She has a BA in Performing Arts and advanced training in trauma-informed therapies, including biodynamic cranial sacral therapy, ACT, attachment therapy, and Kundalini yoga. With this wealth of knowledge and experience transforming hearts and minds, she has spent many years working with her Switch On Leadership co-founder to unfold the self-to-system leadership method. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, and you heard it in the official introduction. Talk about a diverse background, from the sports arena to the business arena to focusing on your company's most precious resource, your culture, which here at Deep Wealth, we call that an X factor that insanely increases the value and the success of your company, to being compassionate and conscious and creative. But I'm going to stop it right there because we have Alison with us in the person. Alison, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's a true delight and pleasure to have you with us. But I'm curious, Alison, there's always a story behind the story. Alison, what's your story? What got you to where you are today?
Okay, thank you for having me, Jeffrey. So it's been quite a different, I'd say, unique journey of where I started and where I have ended up, at least on paper. To me, it makes perfect sense, but reading it out loud, it seems very unusual, actually. Mm-hmm. So at 10 years old, I moved away from my parents to train as a gymnast. And so I spent 10 years training and became an elite gymnast. So that's kind of where I started off. So I was really pushing my performance and competitive edge physically, mentally, and emotionally every day. And there are pros and cons to that whole journey. From there, I shifted into the dance world and became a contemporary dance teacher and choreographer. So got to move into a more expressive side of myself, but still in that performance sort of right, wrong, good or bad mentality, perfectionism. And I had multiple injuries and chronic pain for years. And then I tried every therapy out there and nothing helped until I tried something called craniosacral. And after 2 years of doing that, I became pain-free.
Wow.
So that was quite a profound shift and point in my life. And I decided that I wanted to train. And so I became a craniosacral therapist myself, which is a trauma-informed therapy. that's when I really had a paradigm shift in my whole way of perceiving and thinking about myself and the world, our health, our wholeness, the interconnectivity between everything, the wholeness, and how trauma and adversity really fragments and breaks that down, as well as really learning how the body self-heals and how we can come into a co-creative relationship with our inherent wisdom. And from there, I met my business partner and now husband, and we shared the same vision. We met at Wisdom 2.0 at Google, and we started a company called Switch On Leadership, where we are both directors, and we created a theory of change called biotransformation theory, and we run transformational leadership programs all around the world in companies for leaders.
So much there. Alison, is there more? It sounds like you're just warming up. You've done so much. Is there more to that, or did you want to put a pause on it there? I mean, my goodness.
I know, I felt like I had to pause. I'm also a yoga instructor as well. So the world of embodiment is what I became passionate about. So my focus was what some people call bottom up versus top down. So really working with people through their body first, and teaching people basically about self-awareness, how the mind and body work, how our psychology and our biology work, really understanding that it's one whole system, one whole iOS, the internal operating system. So I really believe that one of the best superpowers we can develop, especially as leaders, is our self-awareness.
So much there. And, Alison, as you're sharing that, I feel so much at home. And for our listeners who know that Deep Wealth, a podcast, as we say, to help our listeners extract both their business and personal deep wealth. And what you're saying resonates so much, because at Deep Wealth, we believe and we talk about and we really encourage that when you have it together on the personal side, you're healthy, you're fit, you're doing the right things, you have energy, you have clarity, it comes together even more so on the business side and not the other way around. And so I'm really excited to go into some of that today. But let me ask you, 10 years old, you leave the family, you go into an incredibly competitive, demanding, tasking sport with gymnastics, the USA elite gymnast kind of role that you're taking on at such a young age. And you kept on that really professional side at such a young age in the sports area. How did that impact you in terms of your mindset as you look from where you are today to back then? How did that sculpt and change you as a person that perhaps if you wouldn't have done that, it would be completely different? Any sense, any ideas?
Yes, definitely. Some pros and cons. I definitely learned self-discipline and how to set short-term and long-term goals and action them forward and meet those goals. I am grateful for that level of self-discipline and commitment. However, it also came with a perfectionist mindset, which can really be debilitating. So it's a fine line between excellence and having an idea that there's something perfect, which is a very linear way of thinking and going about things. So it was this right or wrong mentality. I'm either right or wrong versus what am I actually learning here? What am I discovering? What am I learning? And so I didn't learn that for quite a while. That was a journey. It still is a journey because I can drop back in really quick to that. But I also know how to get back out of it as well.
And what's interesting with that, Alison, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the role of leadership specifically, and we'll talk a lot about culture and what's going on with that, perfectionism and right, wrong, black, white, it has to be this way, no other way. Yes. Those kinds of characteristics, I suspect, and you can tell me, Jeffrey, you're way off base, or yeah, there's something to that. That kind of thing, which we hear so much out there just in popular culture, I would imagine can lead to a toxic culture, a harsh culture, not getting the best out of people. It's this way or the highway. I expect better of this. It has to be at this level, not good enough. Talk to us about that, what you've seen with yourself personally and how that's transformed or manifested in the work that you're doing in the C-suite with corporations, with leaders. What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say this is more common than not. It's kind of a trap that we get ourselves into, that we are right or wrong or good or bad, again, versus what am I learning? So not only holding that mindset for ourselves, but for each other as well, because that came from somewhere. So it usually came from the other side of the conversation, of somebody in the culture saying, often in a very shaming or blaming, complaining way, no, it needs to be this way or that way. And so we get stuck in this trap versus having a dialogue about something and discovering what is working and what isn't working.
And along those lines, Alison, because it's so easy for us to be doing something we're not even aware that we're doing it. So for yourself, and hey, you're only human. I hear you. Sometimes I can fall back into that, but I catch myself. That was the key thing. My ears perked up. Yeah, Jeffrey, I catch myself and I can course correct. How can a listener who's listening to us, yeah, Jeffrey, Alison, that sounds a lot like me. Now that you're talking about that, I'm not even aware that I'm doing that. People have told me that. I'm not even aware that I'm doing that. How can we catch ourselves doing that? Are there questions that we should be asking or signs of how we're behaving that we should be looking for? What does that look like?
So for me, I get a very specific feeling of stress in my body. It takes me into a very narrow-minded place where I don't see options or choices. It feels a bit shut down, and it feels like you are willing something to happen. I personally teach a lot about interoceptive awareness. So what we're feeling and sensing in our body, and using that as a cue to guide us, whether we are sort of on the right track. And so for me, I'm really listening into my body so I can feel it right away in my chest and tightness in my head. And I've just noticed that I'm looking for a right answer instead of what's possible here.
Interesting. And so, Alison, from what you've seen with yourself, let's go now from the sports arena, which you've been in, probably one of the most challenging, toughest, most demanding, talk about pressure, to the business arena, which I'm sure is similar but different at the same time. When you're working with organizations, regardless of the size of the organizations, and you're looking at the culture and how we can get the best out of our culture, knowing that if we have the right culture, the business results that we want will follow. I like to rely a lot on Pareto's law, or what some people call the 80-20 law, where 80%, give or take either side of that, 80% of the issues, the problems, the challenges that we're seeing are usually coming from 20%, 15%, 25% of the same root causes. Would that apply in the work that you're doing, Alison, with the different companies that you're working with for some of the challenges or issues? And if that's the case, what would be some of those issues and some of the ways to correct that and fix that?
So, our companies and our systems and our world are made up of people. And we are all in relationship with one another. So the breakdown, I really think, happens within our internal operating system. And so this is why self-awareness is so key. And really understanding all leaders are saying they want to be more adaptable, resilient, collaborative, motivated, etc. So the question is, why aren't these things happening? Why is it so difficult? And with the world of VUCA, which is the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous sort of chaos that is around us, we're needing more of these internal capabilities to deal with it. So the question is, why are we not able to do this? And the answer is really understanding that it goes all the way back to the moment that we were born, and understanding our adverse and traumatic experiences, because this stops us from developing. So I often with leaders, we talk about the attachment with our mothers and how that shows up in our purpose. And so it's really interesting how these early childhood experiences show up in the workplace, in our relationships and our ability to be effective leaders in the world. And they're often very surprised that the past is showing up in the future. And that's why the transformational leadership is, I think, key to unlocking leaders' potential.
And Alison, let me ask you this, because I'm thinking of a listener who, no judgment, no fault of any listener, they're following the quote unquote societal norms, which up until recently, but still in a lot of places, has been, okay, Jeffrey, come on, forget the personal feelings that you're being weak. Put that off to the side. You've got to work harder, work longer, burn the candle at both ends. You'll sleep when you're dead. Just figure it out, get it done. Don't give me excuses, make it happen. And they're completely ignoring all the personal, the softer side of things, what we would call a deep wealth, even the art side of both life and business. So for someone who was groomed in that kind of environment, or their mindset is even in that way of thinking, and they're hearing us talk and they're saying, Jeffrey, Alison, come on, this stuff is nonsense. It doesn't really apply in the business world. What would you say to that listener of perhaps why there's a different narrative, why there should be a curiosity to explore what we're talking about?
Yeah, so I know this voice really well because I came from that. In our work, we teach these two modes, and one is called control and protect mode, and the other is create and connect mode. And these two modes are really key to understanding, and they come with an internal voice inside of our head. So I know when I'm maybe being sarcastic or, oh, come on, like you said, what are these? A lot of people call them soft skills. Let's just get on and make it happen. I know that is my control and protect mode voice. And create and connect has more of a curious, as you said, it's curious, it's kind, it's compassionate. It seeks to understand from a learner's mindset. And I think in the science, when we realize that our emotions are really driving a lot of our beliefs and our mindset and our behaviors and habits in the world, then we start to shift what is valuable and understanding what has us feel stuck, for example, because often in coaching, we focus on the behaviors and the beliefs and the mindset, which is more cognitive, and not the emotional layer and the sensations, the felt sense in the body, which is that interoceptive awareness that I mentioned. So when working with leaders, I think it's really important to understand these two modes, but also how they show up in these different layers and how that affects our ability to perform.
And when you're looking at these different layers and really what makes us as a person tick, and when we now take that into the business context, and it's a whole other, we can have a whole series, forget an episode, we can have a whole series of why when we get this right on the personal side, we're optimizing our life for happiness and joy and fulfillment. And if we're happy, our whole experience, it's entirely different than perhaps what we're going through right now. For people that are listening, though, the what's in it for them is, hey, if you can take this and you can embed this into the culture, and you can correct me if I'm off base with this, Alison, I suspect employee loyalty, the ability to grow as a company, the ability to increase profits, the ability to have a company that's just doing good in the world, that gives you a mission to really be proud of and gets you out of bed every day, that you can really enhance all of those things. Can you talk to us about how an awakened leader who's now in tune with some of these things that we're talking about, or all these things that we're talking about, how we can take that into the company?
Well, this is a whole nother conversation, and it's easier said than done. And it is absolutely, it's a choice to go on this journey for your life, meaning there is no end. And I think the lines between personal and professional are very blurry now because of the state that we're in. We're realizing that we actually do really need to upgrade our self-awareness. And that isn't just something I do out of hours. It's how to lead, because as I said, businesses are made up of people in relationships. So how we show up in relationships. It's amazing when people have a certain level of self-awareness and empowerment and agency, and how different the communication is. It's hard to explain until you're in the moment having these conversations, because, and this is something that we work with leaders in something that we call transformative circles. So it's like a brave and safe space to show up in a very different way, where we prioritize each other's humanity first, and really pulling that forward, because it's almost like the higher up the leader is, the more pressure they feel to show up in a certain way and not make mistakes. And so these circles allow very different conversations to happen. And there is something really beautiful that happens when people feel safe enough and there is trust between one another, and they can really listen to one another without feeling like they just need to talk and be right, to be curious about each other, so that it's just like on the outside, isn't it? So that there is a bond, there is a trust, there is also a higher sort of purpose through the organization, the company's purpose, that everybody is gathering around to serve.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're talking about that, because I know when looking at what your company's doing, who you're working with, what that looks like, my goodness, some of the logos on the website, they just speak for themselves. One that jumps out, Alison, and particularly during our conversation, if we were to take a listener and say, hey, I know you're not buying into this right now, but take a look at this company. So Microsoft really stands out. One of the companies on your website that you've been helping and working with. And Microsoft, up until very recently, was doing a terrific job of working themselves to become obsolete and having a culture that was just known for not being so great. And now through different leadership, new leadership, that's completely changed. It's a whole different company. They're getting back up and out there in terms of profits and being really a part of the business landscape once again. And so for the listeners who are saying, yeah, this stuff, I'm more old school or traditional with all these other things. Hey, think again. Microsoft did a complete 180 by doing the things and embracing the kind of culture that Alison, you and I are talking about today. Any thoughts or comments on that?
I don't think it's an option anymore. I don't even think it is about whether it should happen or not. It's key to our survival and ability to thrive. Somebody once said, we're like cavemen walking around with smartphones. We have the high tech, yet we're also terrified to sit with uncomfortable emotions and work through conflict. It's the courage, it's the willingness to be courageous and go inside yourself and really sit and work through these difficult situations.
And so walk us through that, Alison, for the enlightened listener coming out of this episode who's saying, okay, never really thought of it in that way, but I'm open to suggestions. And as I think about it, it really makes a whole lot of sense. The business landscape has changed. The world has changed. What worked yesterday isn't working today. And we have plans to be around for many years, decades, whatever the case may be. So if that listener showed up today, Alison, and said, okay, sign me up as a client. I want to go through your self-to-system leadership. I want to have you transform us. I want to change our culture. I want to do things right. And Alison, I know you could easily say, well, Jeffrey, that depends on the company and what that looks like. And every company is very specific on a case-by-case basis. There is no one-size-fits-all.
Right.
I agree, and I hear you on that.
Right.
That said, though, big picture-wise, what does that look like? What would leadership or a company expect in terms of beginning that process with you?
So we do have a pretty in-depth diagnostic that we have companies go through so that we can really pinpoint the pain points so that we know where to direct our curriculum. And so we do customize our programs. They're very interactive. We really use the whole operating system, the body, the mind, and doing unconventional practices like breathing and visualizing and using music We do a lot of peer-to-peer work for coaching. So it's really first taking people into conscious leadership and developing the mind and body and the self-awareness through unconventional practices. That's the starting point. And then we evolve with the company. So it's very much a co-creative relationship and experience along the way. We don't just train or set out a very specific program that's in place. We're very adaptable, dynamic, because this is how our consciousness works. So it's definitely always a new and interesting and fun ride.
And let me ask you something, because in coming up with this system, Alison, and again, congratulations on really the change you've been able to affect and effect out there in the corporate world. You went through that yourself, and I want to circle back to something that you said at the start of the conversation. When you were an elite gymnast, you mentioned that you had some injuries, you're in a lot of pain, and it sounds like you're really one of the few who you're able to identify that and then course correct that and get yourself out of pain. And where I'm going with that is many people forget what it feels like to feel healthy and normal. And when they wake up, it's the start of a new day full of new opportunity. Maybe they feel that physical pain that comes in again, and they just forget what it's like to not have that. And this is just the way that it is. This is the new normal, or this is what happens as you get out there and as you age. All these are anything but truisms, but that's what we're told. That's what a lot of people believe, that they've lost sight of that. And where I'm going with this for the listeners who are saying, okay, well, I heard Alison talk about this Kundalini yoga and all these trauma therapies and all these other kinds of things. That is really like a key to unlock a person to becoming human again. Because I would imagine, Alison, and agree or disagree, if someone's in pain and in discomfort, how in the world can you feel good? And if you're not feeling good 24/7, how in the world are you going to show up as your best self and have other people feel good when you can't do that yourself? So what was that like for you, and what were your takeaways when you went through that journey to heal your pain, that you can now take that and help other leaders, other people in a leadership position, business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, the list goes on? What would you share with us?
Quite a journey indeed. So that's the thing. If we're in one state all the time, then we don't know that another state exists. And so this is one of the great arguments for doing embodiment practices and transforming and healing, really. Because until we realize that we can feel different, we're stuck. And so I think one has to start with the belief that I can feel different. I can transform this pain. And I think once you know that, and this is where the gymnastics training came in handy, is really the self-discipline and the commitment I had to my own transformational journey, literally every single day. So even catching my inner voice, like, what am I saying? What am I saying to myself moment to moment? And it's literally catching yourself every moment. Am I in a sort of a negative ruminating place, or am I focused on something positive and moving forward? What are my emotions? Do I have negative emotions? Okay, what is that? Why do I have that? And just going into it, not ignoring it, not fighting it, not wishing it wasn't there, but really going in to the pain, which is counterintuitive of what the body wants to do.
And Alison, as we're talking about this from your personal experience, are there any stories that you can share with us? And obviously we'll keep things confidential and no names, of a particular instance you're working with a client who had issues in this area or that area, and how things changed or came out at the other side when you went through your unique process?
So just because we're talking about the sort of body and emotion and the physical aspect, leaders are all the time sort of blown away that For example, somebody came in with a migraine and said, at the end of the day, a migraine is gone. Little things like that to a complete sort of shift in, I have completely feel a different way. I'm in a different state. And just how remarkable that is when you're in a different state and you're able to think in a more coherent way and have a different conversations with people. There's clarity, you name it.
It's amazing how, again, when we get things right internally, how that really manifests externally, both personally and business in all areas of our life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Alison, as we're talking about this, there's a lot of ground that we covered. And for our listeners, we always like to have, out of every episode, at least one actionable item before they go on to the next phone call or meeting or email or activity, whatever that's going to be. So if a listener could do one thing, perhaps low-hanging fruit, it's low effort but high impact. Any thoughts or suggestions on what a listener could do?
Absolutely. It's very simple, but very effective, is to pause, close your eyes, take a couple deep, long breaths, relax your nervous system, listen, and then action forward from that place.
It's amazing. When you think about it, on the surface, it sounds so simple, but as we like to say at Deep Wealth, don't confuse simple with simplicity. And Alison, with slowing down, taking time to really go within and think about it, it sounds a lot like that advice or experiences of other people, even myself, where, hey, that's a big decision. Let me sleep on it. The old expression, let me sleep on it. Let me see how I feel in the morning. And I know science is now backing this up.
Exactly.
Of how it's not just our brain, the single brain that we think. We have multiple brains in the body. Some people call it an instinct or a gut feeling. Science is backing that up. So what's going on with the science when you're saying, hey, slow down, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, go within, relax. What's happening there behind the scenes?
Yeah. So one of the things that we teach is nervous system mastery, and really understanding and feeling the difference between an activated nervous system and a settled nervous system. And what happens when we're activated or when we're triggered, the frontal cortex shuts down and we don't have the ability to see choice or be more rational. So we're just knee-jerking our decisions, which we don't want to do. So breathing is a really quick and easy way to settle, what we call settling the nervous system. And then the prefrontal cortex comes online. We are more present. We're able to then attune to another person, make better decisions. And in this space, we also can start to tap into insight and ideas, even intuition. So it's what happens when the nervous system settles. It opens up different channels of information. And when we do this in a group, then we can really light up the collective intelligence of the group. And this is where the sort of collaboration and the magic starts to happen.
It's interesting, Alison. I'm going to venture a guess, and you can tell me if there's something to it. You have such a varied background. And your professional designations, it reads like an encyclopedia. And we heard all about that in the official introduction: biodynamic craniosacral therapy and attachment therapy, Kundalini yoga, and it just goes on and on. But it sounds like you're coming in really with a toolbox. And as you're working with groups or individual business owners or leaders, you're taking an assessment. Okay, where's Jeffrey right now? Where do I see him? Okay, he's over there. This tool, that's going to be the quickest and most effective way to get him back to neutral or grounded or in an open state. Is there something to that?
Well, it depends on whether I'm doing a one-on-one coaching with somebody versus working with a group of people in a program. But I do love working one-on-one for that reason, is you get to really understand the landscape of that individual and specifically what is going to work for them. And what might work for one might not be the thing that somebody else needs. So, for example, some people have a system that is called hypo versus hyper. So if somebody has a sort of a slower, sluggish system, you want to do more rigorous movements, quicker breathing, different embodied practices to get them going. That wouldn't be good for somebody who is hyper and maybe there's a lot of anxiety, which is so common. Then it's the slower breathing, for example, visualizing. And there's a lot of different tools that I use to work with people, just depending on their specific, what we call protective patterning.
Interesting.
And how that shows up. Yeah.
And so, Alison, as we start to go into wrap-up mode here, let me ask you this. To rehumanize business, and you and I spoke about this offline, and that's something that gets you out of bed every day and something really the world needs. And we're right there with you at Deep Wealth as you're going out there and evangelizing and doing that. To rehumanize business, would I be correct in saying it has to start with us as leaders? We have to become the people, and we have to become that old saying, become the change that you want to see in other people, become that change so that you can then take that back into your group or your company, into the culture, and have other people follow your lead. Is there something to that?
Yes. I mean, focus inward. It doesn't matter where we are, right? I think we've just compartmentalized for so many years with these different roles. And again, leadership isn't a role. It's a human right and responsibility. I think that everybody has. And if we're going to start shifting things around for our planet and our people, then it starts with transforming ourselves so that we can unfold and evolve into leaders.
Well said. And let me ask you this before we go into the wrap-up question. Is there a message that you'd like the listeners to walk away with? Perhaps something that we haven't spoken about or we've barely scratched the surface on?
I would say the message is still maybe to get more curious and be in awe and wonder of your body and your mind and what is possible when you turn your attention inward and really listen to your body's wisdom.
That's a terrific message. Yeah. Terrific message. Powerful. Hold that thought for just a moment because it's a perfect segue into the wrap up. And I say this on every episode, but it's so true because I have the privilege to ask every guest. It's become a tradition here in the Deep Wealth podcast, this one question. And let me set this up for you, Alison. It's a fun question. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time.
Yeah.
And so, Alison, the fun part is tomorrow morning, you look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car there curbside, doors open, waiting for you to hop on in, which you do. And you're now going to go back to any point in your life. Alison, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what would you tell your younger self in terms of life wisdom or life lessons? Or, hey, Alison, do this, but don't do that. What would that sound like?
I would say face your fears.
Wow. So much and so little.
Yeah, I know. It sounds silly on the one hand because it's been said for so long, but it really is that. That's the thing that blocks us from being amazing and incredible. And to just really sit with it and look at it and go, okay, I'm going to befriend you and transform you.
Wow. So powerful, really, in the business and the personal, just in life. Face your fears. Powerful. Alison, let me ask you this. We're going to make this incredibly easy for our listeners because everything will be in the show notes. If a listener has a question or they like what they're hearing, they want to reach out, become a client or something in between, where's the best place to reach you online?
My LinkedIn.
Okay, terrific. And for our listeners, it'll be a point and click. It doesn't get any easier. Alison, it's official. It's a wrap. We did it. We took your knowledge, your insights, your wisdom. We're paying it forward. We're getting that out there. And on behalf of the community and the team, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.